Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am AJ, and I'm going to break down UFC Fight Night, Overeem versus Volkov in full. Was kind of browsing on the internet. I didn't see a whole lot of people post their videos. I saw some, but I figured, why not add one more to the mix to get you guys, jump started on your research if you haven't done so already. So I've actually researched this entire card. And I'm really excited to talk about it with you all. I've got my screen share here. I got an updated computer. The visual is better, just the overall quality. Hopefully the sound as well. And so I'm sharing my screen here. We're going to go in the order of Tapology. And we'll start it off with the first fight of the night, Jerome Rivera taking on Ode Osborne here. Just finished tape on this yesterday. It's a complete pass for me from a betting perspective. I just think that both guys have a lot of holes in their game defensively. I do agree with Ode being the favorites. He's more prepared, but that's kind of with a grain of salt because we just saw Jerome Rivera fight a couple cards ago, matter of fact, against Francisco Figueiredo. And so I think that Ode is a bit better of an athlete. I think he's a bit quicker, but his submission defense does give me pause. So if these two are tangling on the ground, I think that Rivera will be a submission threat to Ode. But the thing with Rivera that I've always kind of thought about him is, yes, his best skill set is grappling on the mat. However, he consistently struggles to get takedowns in fights. And so that's why he's just a tough fighter for me to back at this point. Obviously, he's young. He could get better. Maybe his wrestling improves as time goes on here. But right now, at this particular point in time, he's just a fighter that, potentially I look to fade. As it pertains to a pick, I'm going to go with Ode Osborne. Next matchup on the card, and we're going to just go right up here. Yusuf Zalal and Sungwoo Choi. I do agree with Zalal being the favorite. I just think he has more passive victory. If you have more passive victory, I tend to think that you should be the favorite in your matchup. And what do I mean by that? Well, Zalal, I think he could win the fight on the feet. He's got that, point fighting range game. He's got the low calf kick that those guys in Denver utilized, Mark Montoya, James Krause, that whole team. And he's very good at it. Zalal's very elusive, moves laterally on the outside well, and he does a good job of inflicting damage, not the most dangerous strikes, but, he's basically a point fighter, but also very good with the lateral movement so that you're not being able to hit him. And why that he has an additional path to victory, Zalal, because I think he could grapple here. I mean, I don't think he's as good of a grappler as Tucker and Evloev, who Choi obviously struggled with. But he does, if there is going to be grappling success here, I do think it would more than likely come from Zalal. His wrestling is not great, but it is improving. And I've seen, there is evidence of Choi getting taken down rather easily. So, and Choi does tend to give up his back, which is a concern. So I'm sure, like, in some respect, Choi is live on the feet. He's a talented striker, but I actually edge Zalal there a bit more just with his point fighting style, his defensive movement, just moves a bit better. And also he's got that grappling path to victory. So despite taking this fight on short notice, I am going to side with Yusuf Zalal. And moving right on up here. And let me just say this. I'm happy that we've got as many as 14 fights on this card. That's honestly tremendous. Molly McCann and Lara Prosopio. It's an interesting matchup, man. I think there's a potential upset alert here, and I'm not going to bet Procopio because I still do think there's a lot of areas for a game that she can improve upon. And even though I'm favoring her as an underdog, still I don't want to bet her. And that might be a little bit perplexing to some, but at the end of the day, I want to place bets that I feel good about. And I've got some other spots in this card that there's one other spot that we'll get to, and potentially one more that I just feel better about. Again, I'm picking her to win. I think she's a live underdog, but again, it's just a spot that I personally want to pass. I've got a lot of other bets posted for the future, so definitely keeping busy with that. But it's just not one that I really prioritized. Why I think she's kind of live here is I do think McCann is the better pure boxer. I think she's got better volume. I think she hits harder. But Procopio throws with a lot of volume as well. We saw that in her UFC debut against Carol Hossa. Landed a bunch of significant strikes, north of 150. And she's also got a 5.5-inch reach advantage over McCann. So I don't think Procopio's as good as Tyla Santos, who McCann obviously struggled with last time out. I don't think she's as talented as Jillian Robertson. But She's got the reach. She throws at a high pace. And even though I do think McCann is the better technical boxer, I could see Procopio having success for those reasons. Again, the reach, her technique isn't bad by any means, and she throws at a high pace. And she is a good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. I don't think her wrestling is great, but the thing with McCann is she's not a good defensive grappler. She defends takedowns at a low rate, below 50%. We saw her taken down by Jillian Robertson controlled. We saw her obviously taken down by Tyler Santos controlled. We saw her taken down by Diana Belbita. So I do believe Molly's defensive grappling, I do believe she's improving overall as a fighter, which is great. I still don't think that her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, her grappling on the mat is on the level of Lara Procopio. So it is a spot where I do think it's a dog or pass situation from a betting perspective. I do consider this a close fight, albeit even though I'm siding with Procopio. McCann has certainly been much more active. I do think she's a better technical striker. So it's not like I can't see the path to victory for McCann. And so I'm going to side with Lara Procopio here. Next up, we've got, speaking of which, the aforementioned Carol Hossa and Jocelyn Edwards here. Yeah, this is one where I think the odds are a bit wide, and I still do favor Hossa and a sort of betting philosophy, if you will, that I like to adapt. I don't bet fighters unless if I cap them as favorites. And why? Well, because I would essentially be betting against myself, right? If I think that the most likely thing is the fighter that I'm backing loses, but I think maybe they should be like plus 200 instead of plus 300. I'm still kind of betting against myself. And again, I know everybody's got a little bit different philosophy, a little bit different take on that, but I'm just personally saying why I don't back underdogs, even if I think the odds are off, because I don't favor them. Because we only get to see the fight play out, one time most times, and that is why I do that. And so I do consider Jocelyn a live dog. I do think these odds are a bit wide because Carol has looked good in some respects in her fights. She throws at a high pace. She could wrestle well. She trains with Jessica Andrade. She actively competes in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competition, but she still isn't I'd say a defensively sound striker. I still don't like her submission defense. I think that even though she is accomplished in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I have seen her submitted from guard on the regional scene not too long ago. And Jocelyn, she's got an active guard. She's aggressive. She comes forward. She's not the best technical fighter either. But I do think that this fight will be fought at a high pace. I think that both women are there's areas of their defensive striking where I think that one could exploit the other. They both throw. They're both aggressive. They throw with power. And I do think that there's a reasonable enough chance where Edwards could just make this fight close or maybe even get a guard sub. Because again, I haven't really seen any, we haven't really seen what Rosa get really threatened from an opposition's guard since the regional scene, right? So maybe it's improved in the meantime, but I think with Edwards being as aggressive as she could be on the ground, it does pose some problems for Rosa. So for me personally, I would definitely pass on Rosa, especially at this line. I do consider Edwards a live underdog, despite the fact that she's taking this fight on short notice. But similar to Jerome Rivera, who we talked about, she just recently fought, right? So she's relatively going to be good to go. She's fresh off a win. So we'll see how it plays out. But I really do believe that for me, it's a pass fight, but I do think that the underdog is live here, despite me picking Carol Hossa to win. All right. And then we got the fifth fight on the card. Justin James and Devontae Smith. This is a fight that was put together relatively quickly, relatively soon rather. And, I get it. I've communicated with some people, wanting to fade Smith. I get that angle, whenever we see a fighter that is hyped and we see them lose, we want to fade them right again. But it's not that simple for me, at least. Again, I don't, if you want to take a shot, I'm not going to hold you back. Don't let me hold you back. But again, it's a scenario for me where I like to wait for that matchup where I think they're fadeable again. And I do think that obviously Smith is beatable. I think he's a tremendous talent, but there is a clear prototype of a fighter that I think could beat him. A fighter with a good shin, solid cardio, and good grappling. We saw that on the regional scene when he fought John Gunther, taken down, and he got stopped. So again, does James fit that prototype? Again, I'm not saying James can't win the fight. He's got power. We saw Worthy Smith knocked out by Worthy last time, and he's coming off a layoff here. James has been more active, but I still do favor Smith. We got James here moving up in weights to lightweight. Smith is going to be the bigger guy. He's got 8 inches of reach. I think that he could have success with the low kick, kind of like Gabriel Benitez did. I think that Smith's a much better athlete. I think he's a better striker. And even though I don't think that Smith's cardio is great, I do think it's probably better than James. Again, he's been preparing more. James is taking this fight on short notice. James is the guy that I would typically, with all due respect, just looked. I bet against him when he fought Gavin Tucker, because that's kind of how I saw the fight, was that he needed to win the fight quickly, and he almost did, because the guy's got a tremendous amount of power and tremendous amount of heart. But he tends to fade. And again, maybe his cardio has improved in the meantime. I don't know, but I can only go off of what I've seen on tape, and I've seen him slow down. We've seen him slow down more than once. If you want to go back to the regional scene. So again, I wish all the best for these guys. But for me, again, I am going to pick Smith. I don't think, for me personally, this isn't the spot to fade him. Again, down the line, we get a fighter that has good cardio, solid or good offensive grappling, and could take a good punch, because Smith does hit really hard. And so, again, it kind of reminds me of, there's been a lot of hype trains throughout the UFC where people, they get really hyped up, they're big favorites, they lose, and people want to bet against them in the next fight. It kind of reminds me of Alexander Hernandez. And he was matched up with Chris Gritzmacher, and people were kind of, maybe not picking against him, but maybe underestimating Hernandez in some respects. It all depends on the matchup. Again, to me, it's not so black and white to where it's like, because he lost his previous fight, that means for sure that he's going to lose again as a big favorite. It's just not that, you know what I mean? Like, it's not that wishy-washy to me, or maybe that's not the right word, but just not so, draw the line in the sand. It's that simple, So those are my thoughts there. And then we've got sixth fight. This is the other bet that I'm considering. Again, nothing official yet. Maybe at the time you're listening to this, I have placed it. Of course, it'll be posted on Twitter amongst other places. But yeah, Timur Valiev and Martin Day. I am considering Valiev as a bet, and this is a fight similar to the last one. I do think that it is kind of pretty clear. Draw the line in the sand, black and white, however you want to do it. I mean, I think that Day has a chance to win by knockout. Otherwise, I just think that he loses. I just think Valiev is the much better fighter. And the hesitancy with that was Valiev was a much better fighter than Trevin Jones last time out. And despite dominating the fight for the most part, he still got clipped. He got finished, whether you agree with that stoppage or not. And that wasn't the only time that Valiev has been rocked. He's been rocked on the regionals. And so, again, there is always risk with these plays. I mean, we always, again, and I've done this in the past as well. We want like this perfect silver lining for the bets that we place, to where it makes it seem like nothing could go wrong. It's the perfect bet. There's essentially no risk, right? But I always say to myself, and I've been saying it more and more to myself recently, there's always risks with these bets. Again, flukes do happen. Again, that's why I like to set percentages. So it shouldn't be this huge shock that if something comes to fruition that maybe I don't think is super likely, hey, I factored it in to some extent. Kind of like Sarah McMahon, my bet last card, I thought she was a better wrestler, but the way I saw Pena winning was getting an opportunistic sub, and that's essentially what happened. So again, that's one example. That's one example where, again, I'm not shying away from when I'm wrong. But that was an example I was wrong there. And even like Dan Hooker against Michael Chandler, I thought that Chandler could maybe knock him out early, and that's what happened, right? So that I essentially knew what I was getting myself into, and I'm okay with it at the end of the day, right? So again, there's always risk, and there is risk with this here, but with Valiev, I just think he's the vastly better fighter. He's much more prepared. Maybe the move up to now this is 145 pounds instead of 135. Maybe it helps his durability. It's more narrative-y than anything, but it's possible. I think he's more dangerous than Day. I think he's the better striker, more varied, more technical, sharper, better footwork, better range management. And I do think he's got the better chin. I've seen Day rocked multiple times. He's been knocked out cold on the regional scene. He was knocked out cold by Davey Grant. And he was also hurt by Dos Santos last time. That's part of the reason why I bet the fight doesn't go to decision when he fought Anderson Dos Santos. And so, again, there's always risk, but I think that Valiev, not only is he the better striker who's more prepared, I think he's a much better grappler. I've seen him get his back taken for long periods of time. I've seen him, get taken down easily. Again, he's just not a good defensive grappler as Martin Day. And Valiev is a BJJ brown belt. He's got a strong Sambo background. He's very accomplished in grappling, amongst other things. So I just think that he is the much better fighter here. Despite a wide line, I am still considering placing a bet. Again, nothing official yet at the time I'm recording this. But again, I will post it on Twitter. The mailing list subscribers will get that as well. And also shout out to betmma.tips, the third-party tracking site out there where I post my bets as well as my analysis. So again, those are my thoughts there. I think that Valiev is a much better fighter, and I think that the odds of it being a big favorite are justified. Again, I feel more comfortable backing him as a big favorite than Devontae Smith, who's largely just been a guy that's going out there and starching guys in the first round. And that might be what happens again. I think that's probably is what happens again. But again, I always say this in the past, is like when these guys don't win by knockout, how likely are they to win the fight? You still cap him as the favorite? I mean, again, I just answer it truthfully, because if I'm not answering it truthfully, I'm essentially lying to myself, right? So for a guy like Smith, yeah, he probably gets by here, but with a guy like Valiev backing him as a big favorite, I think that he's got more paths to winning by a comfortable margin, I think. So we'll see. We'll see exactly what happens here, but those are my thoughts on that matchup. Mike Rodriguez and Danilo Marques, this is an interesting one. I think it's pretty binary, to be honest. I think that Rodriguez has got a big advantage on the feet. He's more technical striker. He's got 5 inches of reach. He's more dangerous, and Marques has been knocked out cold on the regional scene. And so on the feet, I think Rodriguez will look like the favorite, but if it goes to the ground, that's where I think Marques is going to be the favorite. We've seen Rodriguez out-grappled more than once in the UFC by Herman, by Clark, by Allen, right? We've seen him get submitted. We've seen him get his back taken. Marques, he's got a solid jiu-jitsu game. I think his takedowns are good enough to get Rodriguez down. And that's a concern with backing Rodriguez as a big favorite. He doesn't have good cardio. He's never won a fight past the second round, and it's because he historically slows, and he doesn't have good defensive grappling. Again, he's a young guy in his career. He trains at Lausanne MMA. Maybe it's improved in the meantime, but we just saw it not too long ago. So I don't know. To back Rodriguez, I would need to be banking. I need to be banking on cardio improvements, on defensive grappling improvements. And I'm just not there right now. So we'll see what happens. I think Rodriguez probably goes out there and gets a quick KO. But again, he at this big of a line, there is risk with backing him, because he got two clear weaknesses in his game. And again, that's cardio and defensive grappling. And so, yeah, just again, picking Rodriguez, but it is a somewhat hesitant pick. As is this next one on Michael Johnson here, who, again, this is a guy that has wins over Dustin Poirier, Tony Ferguson, Edson Barboza. I mean, for me, it is a matchup that Michael Johnson should win, right? He should go out there and just be the better striker. His takedown defense is good enough to keep the fight standing, and he should win the fight on the feet. But again, historically he does slow down as the fight progresses, and he does have mental lapses in his fights. So again, even a guy like Clay Guida, who is towards the end of his career, he could potentially pose problems by just kind of tiring out Johnson. We know Guida has good cardio. And Johnson, his takedown defense, while fresh, is good, but we've seen him get taken down as he tires by guys that aren't necessarily great wrestlers. And so it is a matchup where, again, I'm not going to play Johnson at this line. I just think it's far too risky, knowing that we've seen more than once he could lose fights that are favorable stylistically for him on paper. So again, it's just a complete pass for me from a betting perspective, even though I'm picking Johnson to win. Beneil Dariush and Carlos Diego Ferreira to open up the main card. I'm looking forward to this one. And, we just saw a rematch last card where a lot could change in a few years since the first meeting. We saw that with Poirier and McGregor. You could very well get a different result. I'm not saying that that's for sure going to be what happens here. There's still a chance that a solid chance Beneil wins, but how Beneil won the first time was he went out there, basically took Diego down and controlled him for all 3 rounds. Can that happen again? I mean, I guess, but I don't think it's particularly likely. I think Diego's gotten quite a bit better in terms of his defensive wrestling, his scrambling ability. And he's an excellent Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner himself. So even though Benny's typically got BJJ advantage, I don't think he does here against Diego. So I think it's primarily going to be a fight where we're going to know pretty early who's going to win. I think that Diego's got the better cardio. He fights at a higher pace. We've seen Beneil slow down in fights more than once, against Dunham, against even the last fight against Scott Holtzman. Even though he finished the fight, you could definitely tell he was slowing down. We know Diego has great cardio. He went out there, landed north of 100 significant strikes against Mirbek Tysonov in the blistering heat in Abu Dhabi, right? So it is a fight where I do side with Diego. I think that if he doesn't get finished quickly, which is possible, he's very hittable early on. We know he could be hurt, like against Nelson, against Tysonov and Poirier. But if that doesn't happen, I just think that his pace is just going to be too much for Beneil, to be honest, as the fight progresses. So it is a fight where I'm going to side with Carlos Diego Ferreira here to win. Cody Stamann and Askar don't need to talk too much about this. I think Cody's just a much better fighter. His line would have to drop. I want to get minus 400. I don't know if we're going to get there, but to warrant a bet, I just think he's a much better fighter, a better striker, more defensively sound, more technical, better wrestler as well, better cardio, and he's much more proven and prepared. So Cody's the biggest favorite on the huge favorites on the card. Cody's actually the one that I feel safest about. He's not a lock. I don't use that word lock, but he is the one that I feel safest about on the card, right? So I totally get him being a big favorite. I think it makes sense. Alexandre Pantoja and Manhil Cape, I think it's a potentially a very easy matchup for Pantoja, assuming he goes out there and wants to grapple. I think that is Cape's weakness, right? I mean, we've seen it more than once in his Rising fights, and taken down, get controlled, and as a result, he loses these fights, right, to guys that aren't even necessarily known for their grappling. And Pantoja, I think, is a much better grappler. I think if he comes in with that game plan, and I think it's possible training at American Top Team to take this guy down and maybe even get a submission, I think that he could get Cape potentially out of there on the feet. I think it's close. I think that Pantoja is more aggressive. He has more diversity with his attack, but Cape is very athletic, explosive, powerful, good distance management, kind of like that Figueiredo prototype that we saw Pantoja struggle with. So on the feet, I think it's very close. Kind of 50-50 is the way I see it. But the why I favored Pantoja and why I bet him at the line is I just think he's got a massive advantage on the ground. We saw Pantoja go out there, submit Sasaki quickly, for reference, and then Sasaki, same fighter that Pantoja submitted in the first round, fought Manhil Cape and then just dominated him for 3 rounds in Ryzen. So I think that there's a wide grappling advantage here, and that's why I favor Pantoja more than the odds indicate. All right, Marion Renault and Macy Chiasson. I think Chiasson should be favored. I just much younger, I think closer to her prime. And watching Renault, that last fight against Pennington, took a lot of damage there in round 3. Not ideal. I think that Macy, while she is still fairly green, she has a lot of defensive flaws in terms of her striking and grappling. Her reach, her athleticism, her power, probably good enough to get her by. It is a fight, though, where I think that Renault is probably the better technical fighter, but just where she's at in her career right now, the damage that she's taken in her past 2 fights, it is a fight where I do side with Macy Chiasson to win. And the co-main event, Frankie Edgar and Corey Sandhagen. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's Sandhagen. That's obvious. He's one of the bigger favorites on the card. And Frankie had a good performance last time out, but I think that Sandhagen's got the advantage on the feet. I think that potentially he could do damage. I think he's the bigger finishing threat here. Sandhagen's just such a masterful striker. The flaw in his game is his takedown defense, but I do think that his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is very good. I do think that his scrambling ability and get-ups are very good. So even if Frankie could get him down, I don't feel confident that Frankie could keep him there and or do much with it. Frankie's been struggling to land takedowns in recent fights. He couldn't take down Cub Swanson in the rematch. He couldn't, he took down Munoz briefly, but just albeit very briefly. He's just been largely ineffective in recent years with his wrestling, is Frankie. And it's because of his age, right? He's going out there and he's still doing well, but just he's at a point in his career right now where he's just not as effective as he was when he was in his prime. So again, he's got the takedowns to get Sandhagen down. I just don't think he could do enough with him. And I think that Sandhagen should be able to do enough damage on the feet to either get a stoppage or a decision victory. And then we got the main event, Alexander Volkov and Alistair Overeem. Yeah, I favor Volkov, man, to be honest. I just don't think that Overeem has, he's been winning these two most recent fights after kind of getting teed off on by Sakai early on, by weathering a storm. Let's not forget he almost got stopped by Walt Harris, and then the opposition gets tired and they have defensive grappling vulnerabilities, and Overeem's able to take advantage of that. I don't really see, I don't think Volkov has elite cardio, but I think his cardio is good enough to go 5. And I think his defensive grappling is good enough to keep the fight standing for most of the time. We saw Volkov against Curtis Blades. He could be taken down, but he gives you a lot of resistance and he gets up. And Overeem just doesn't have the cardio. He doesn't have the wrestling or athleticism that Curtis Blades does. So yeah, sure, maybe Overeem could take him down a couple times, but I don't see it being all too significant. So I think it's going to be won or lost in the feet, where I favor Volkov. I think he's got much better volume. I think he's more durable. And that honestly should be enough for him to win. Overeem has been knocked out more than double-digit times, 14 times professionally in MMA. And Volkov is largely shown to be very durable. He got knocked out by Derek Lewis after dominating the fight, and he got knocked out one other time in his career. But over a large sample size, he's proven to be durable. So I think that Volkov's aggression, his pace, his better cardio, and his durability should be enough for him to prevail here. And that's why I agree with him being a favorite. So yeah, that'll do it for the breakdown. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I know this was a quicker one. But I'm really happy that I got on and did the thing, because, like I said off the top, I know that people are putting stuff out there, and that's great, but, I'm trying to add some value where I can while I'm kind of waiting for these DFS salaries to get released. I was happy to get on and do this. I hope you found this insightful, and have a nice day.